After studying and practicing the Bates method on and off for 19 years and struggling through increases in myopia and eventually decreases in myopia, I would get these flashes of clear vision that just seemed to be very random. And I would forget about it and just, go along with my practice, go along with my studies, and, well, I'd occasionally pick it back up again, see some flashes of clear vision, but they would come on randomly and sometimes with great pain. Um, but November 2024, one of my colleagues, who's very well respected in the field of neurooptometric vision rehabilitation, um, came and gave us a talk with his new equipment, gave us a training about phototherapy, optometric phototherapy. And he was drilling in our heads that this therapy is non-cognitive, subcortical, bottom up, autonomic. And when, I kind of sat on that for a while. And as this past March was my child's birthday, we were at the park, and I thought about, wait a minute. I was walking towards a particular tree, and I said to myself, there are autonomic, subcortical, non-cognitive, bottom-up eye movements. And Bates' whole idea is rest through movement. But here we're trying to force the movements, especially with the high nearsighted. Like, I entered optometry school at a minus 6.5, but I would get these random flashes of clarity. I mean clarity, 20/30, 20/25, if not 20/20 vision at times, better in the sunshine than not. And I said, now wait a minute, how do I train the non-cognitive, subcortical, bottom-up, autonomic eye movements? What if I do it that way? And then I thought about all the trainings I've had, well-respected colleagues. I remember Dave Cook. He wrote a book called Shape of the Sky for Strabismus Therapy. What that means is that we look and we want to see the shape of that sky, not the clouds. Forget about the shape of the clouds. The shape of the sky is kind of that one would be sort of a cross starfish, but with only 4 legs kind of pattern. Or if I zoom in higher, we can make a triangle in with that. But I said, now wait a minute. If I look at the shape of the space between the trees, and it was just becoming spring, so there was a lot of space between the tree branches. And I followed those spaces. And I forget about the clarity, because what happens when you identify? You go into a particular neurovisual pattern of operation that is not motion sensitive, and they compete with each other. But if I keep it open with the spaces between the tree branches, and as I looked at that tree, and I just focused on that space, actually focus is the wrong word, I appreciated. You just keep your mind valuing those spaces. That same colleague would say, we see what we value what we see. What you don't value, you don't see, and what you value, you will see. So I need to increase my value to that space. And my vision started to clear. I'm like, wait a minute, I can see my child's legs clearer by watching the child run and look at the space between, on the sides and around the legs from afar, and I could see distinctly the legs. And I started to think about the space. Fortunately, I was at a playground. Look at all those spaces. Don't think about the chains. Think about the spaces in between the chains, the whole space. So if I were to have this, pretend this is filled with crystal, and I shine a laser pointer at it, the whole thing would light up. 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 And I'm just following the spaces. Now I can grow this space or this space by thinking about the perimeter, the space between the entire perimeter. And I just follow the spaces. You don't have to see clearly for spaces, they're already there. No big deal. Or I can back away and see the big square between the poles that the chain is suspended in, and that's one space. But I follow the spaces, and I began to see, by the end of the afternoon, I was seeing real clear outside. And outside, it's easier to see spaces. They're clearer, they're higher contrast. It elicits that neural pathway that's motion sensitive much better. Look at the space between those trees. Look at the entire space. That is the shape of the sky. And I started to apply that. And now these flashes of clarity are no longer random. Now, for me, I can clear even a plus lens now, yet I wear a -3 comfortably. I can easily clear a 250, and I can very functional with a -2.5. But I can clear more with nothing, or even with a mild amount of plus with this method. I've come up with various methods with building on this basic space technique, the space concept, and building upon it using different lenses and prisms, different ways of moving to expand upon this and make this technique easier. But this is the basic technique, is to follow the spaces. Not only do you follow spaces back and forth like that, but I can think about the shape of the space between the bottom of this video and the trunk. And I can think about how it shrinks as I move closer and how it grows as I move further. So I can grow that space and then I can shrink it. So the spaces along this horizon plane is important as the negative spaces between the chain and between the triangles and the areas of the playground. But just spending some time was my way of doing that. And a lot of times I will just, when I start struggling, I will just simply go right back to that simple concept of resting in the space. Don't want to complicate it. And then I build on that with other activities that I have developed since then. All right, so this is Greg Johnson with Lamsight, and I pray that this educates you well, and take care.